So welcome to Behind the Build. I'm your host, Jonathan Jacobs. And today is a special recording at the University of Waterloo. We have 4 alumni with us today. We have Carol Phillips of Moriyama Teshima. We have Robert Kastelic from AKB. We have Drew Mandel from Drew Mandel Architects. And we have Lisa Davidanza from Arcadis. So, the 4 of you all went to school together a couple years ago.
Just a few.
And what we wanted to do with this university concept was to bring people together that were alumni and have them talk about what it was like to, 1, select a school, 2, what the experience was like during the course of your tenure at the school, but then what it's like post-school and what is life like as an architect managing different scales of practice.
Before we dive in, I want to thank Zinco Canada for sponsoring today's food and making this live recording possible. Zinco isn't just a sponsor for us, they're a trusted partner on our project. As you'll hear later in the conversation, the panelists talk a lot about materials, sustainability, and the way architecture shapes environments. That's exactly what Zinco does. Their green roof system is installed over my own studio, and it's become a living, flourishing space for insects, pollinators, and wildlife. It also assists with rainwater management and makes the outdoors more usable and inviting. We've already collaborated with Zinco on projects alongside SMPL Design Studio, Black Lab Architects, Drew Mandel Architects, and Eisen Architecture, with more to come. Every time, they bring reliability, technical expertise, and a real commitment to creating spaces that perform, not just in design, but in how they interact with the natural world. Zinco Canada is proof that when we talk about architecture being bigger than the building itself, we can actually put it into practice. If you want to learn more about Zinco and their suite of opportunities in enhancing your projects, feel free to email me. It's Jonathan, that's Jonathan at waldenhomes.ca.
So I will start off with the open-ended question and we can kind of work our way across. There's no real direct format. And I don't want to point to someone and say, can you answer this? But can you describe what it was like when you were selecting schools and you said, like, I think I'm going to go to Waterloo? What was that like for you individually? And feel free, you can look to each other and decide who you want to answer first.
I can start.
Go for it, Carol.
Yeah. So my journey to Waterloo was a bit circuitous. I would say that, it was probably my older sister who sort of saw the potential for me to study architecture, suggested it. And like most siblings, you take it with a grain of salt. And I did apply only to Carleton and to the University of Waterloo. And my sister studied math at Waterloo. So I was familiar with the school. I was familiar with the reputation. And I came here at the time, straight out of grade 13. And I remember sitting in the interview and Lorenzo Pignati looked at me and he said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "I'm not." And he said, "Well, we have a whole group of people here over the next 3 days who really know they want to be here. So maybe you want to think about that." And I did. I didn't start at Waterloo. I started at Waterloo, but in physics.
Okay.
And that was my big passion. I was into the poetry of, expanding universes and string theory. And then I came to study science at Waterloo and sat in a room with 350 students, and it was not poetic at all, and it was not mind expanding. But I also took iconography as an elective. And I was completely smitten with Robert Wilger standing in front of the class. And that's where that mind expansion happened, was in the iconography class. And I decided there that absolutely I want to go to this school. And I came to architecture through the cultural history program. So that was my pathway to studying architecture at Waterloo.
Mm-hmm. Who's up next? Do you want me to direct this? Is it going to help?
I mean, I can.
Yeah, go for it, Bob.
So I, being from Toronto, I had applied to University of Toronto, Carleton, and Waterloo. I kept it Ontario based. And I think I didn't make, the mail wasn't coming in. I was like, oh, this is not happening. And finally a letter from Waterloo came and said, can you come up for these interviews and present your portfolio? So
I didn't know where Waterloo was.
Waterloo for me was geographically, I hadn't really gone out of the city very much because I was a sort of inner city guy. And so I took a train to Waterloo thinking, it must be really out there far, right? This is pre-cell phone internet stuff.
Yeah.
And just had my big portfolio with oversized paintings sticking out and ending up in Kitchener and get off the train. And then I'm trying to find out how to get to the University of Waterloo. And I asked someone on the street, where's the University of Waterloo? He goes, oh, it's just up, down King Street, or just go down there. So I ended up walking. I guess because I just assumed that it was around. And I kept walking, and then it started to rain. I was like, oh, and my portfolio's open, those old leather portfolios with the zipper, and it was so stuff's getting wet, and I'm sitting out there in a yellow sort of Canadian patterned, I think, with trees and reindeer sweater, and I was trying to hail a cab, but I think in Waterloo you couldn't hail a cab; you had to call for a cab to come to you. And so, being from Toronto, I was like, what's going on? What's wrong with me? I can't hail a cab, and I'm like, it's raining and. So ultimately, finally, I went on a bus. I somehow convinced the driver to let me on with the bus. I don't know if I had tokens, and finally make it to Waterloo and to I guess I almost call it an audition. And you write the précis, which was an amazing thing to do, to think in that context where you get this kind of sort of philosophical line that you have to debate and sort out and reason, I think in an hour and a half. And then the interview came up, and that was remarkable. I remember Thomas Seabohm was there, and that was a pretty remarkable fellow, and he had some great questions. And they looked at me and said, your calculus mark isn't very good. And I was like, I was failing calculus. And I was like, I know, because I was doing a lot of set design and theater work at the school, and so my time was associated to there. Which, when I presented, that was a thing of interest, I think, for the interviewers. And for me, I was really paranoid about the mark. I said, I'm really working hard. I will pass it. But honestly, I don't think I'll get past the 60. And then I finished the interview and left, and I thought, okay, that's not happening. But then ultimately, I got an acceptance, and I was straight from high school, and I was pretty excited. Very excited because it was really the place I wanted to be at.
Right.
Well, you don't know very much when you're in grade 13, but I was aware of the cultural history component of Waterloo and thought it would be well aligned with my interests. And I did not get in the first attempt. And so I worked on things and tried to advance the portfolio. I came in. I actually folded up my rejection letter into this little amulet. I called it What to Make of a Rejection Letter from Architecture School. And Rick Haldenby laughed for a good deal of the interview after that. And I felt at home, and I felt that I was in, and I was. And it was a great experience.
Yeah.
So similar to Drew, I didn't get in the first time. I wasn't prepared. I had a guidance counselor who told me I couldn't be an architect because I didn't take drafting. I guess when I got there and didn't get in, I thought maybe that was true. But so then my next path was to try and take a year and work on my portfolio. So I ended up at York University in May, trying to find an opening for who might accept you in May with math and science courses. And I was studying honors math in the physics department while working on a portfolio, which was an interesting year. And second time around, again, I applied, didn't know much. I was a sheltered suburban kid. And, Waterloo was still the place where it was deemed to be a very good place, had a co-op department, was kind of close to home, but not too far away from home, similar on U of T, Carleton, and Waterloo, and wasn't getting the letter in the mail on the second time. And Carleton's came in, and I had to answer. And I still remember putting the yes on an actual piece of paper, just waiting for Waterloo. And I it came in and it said, "You're in." And I literally took a little bottle of liquid paper and liquid papered off the yes and put the no, mailed it back to Carleton. In my interview, I still remember it was Paul Bakowicz, we always had students, Paul Bakowicz and Val. Val was in my interview. I remember Rick up at the top with the précis, which I will say I struggle with, as I don't communicate as most architects do. I prefer to produce lots of drawings and models rather than stand up and talk about architecture. So for me, that part of it was challenging, but second time around I did it and ended up with these fine people.
And now here you are sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we were in the same class.
Same class.
Yeah.
Same class.
Yeah, I was 2 ahead.
Yeah.
And as you know, in Waterloo, because of the co-op program, the classes 2 ahead and 2 below
Yeah. On the same stream.
are on the same stream. So we feel very close. We just saw each other every 4 months and knew everybody in the classes, the epic Halloween parties, and we just knew each other really, really well through the years.
Halloween parties.
Oh yeah, epic Halloween parties. Always after a deadline. Always after a deadline.
Lisa and I actually randomly had lunch the first day of Waterloo
Yes.
together.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And we sat each other because Rick Andregetti gave us the numbers. We had to sit. We were
Right.
the same thing. And I remember Drew was in a rush because he parked his van on the lawn.
Right.
His moving van on the lawn and had to.
You seem to have these like car stories, Drew.
And Rob and I lived together in a house.
Yes.
7 more.
Seven more. Yeah, it was 7 more.
That's in Waterloo.
I think that was the last year the village residents allowed architects to stay because everyone was just defecting, saying you can't eat the food here. We're never
Yeah,
here.
we left at Christmas. So
Yeah, I was called Ghost. And it's like, yeah. And then I think after that, no more residents. You have to find our own spaces. And yeah, we ended up in a wild house scenario.
So do you feel like and it's just more of an open-ended question, do you feel like when you were in school and you were learning about it all, that it had given you because of that co-op, it had given you a really good opportunity to understand what it was going to be like when you entered the profession?
Most definitely.
Yeah. It was
Without a doubt, I think.
Yeah.
It was really tough times though. So
Yeah.
I mean, some people, I remember you guys was like, there's a lot of work abroad because it was a really bad recession. So we had to kind of fend for ourselves and maybe invent some kind of jobs to get
I think it was
co-op
the first
credit
time we heard
sometimes.
the word recession. Right?
Recession, yeah. Yeah. So sometimes you got work, sometimes you had to make something up to get some credits.
Yeah, that's right. But on the question of co-op,
Yeah.
I still maintain that this is the best architecture school, and because it stands on those sort of 3 pillars. It stands on cultural history, design studio, and co-op. And I think somehow you come out of that with this really, really well-rounded experience where you understand the cultural importance of what you're doing, the poetic importance of what you're doing. You've exercised your design hand, but you've had these rotating practical experiences and see what it's like to work in an architecture office. And for myself, I had a bit of wanderlust. So even back in the day when there was no internet or cell phones, I worked in Vancouver and Barcelona, and I just left. I went to these places and just tried everything. And when the recession hit, when I graduated, I had no problem leaving to go to Hong Kong for 2.5 years. And so I think that experience of knowing you could have these kind of little adventures through your career that were not just about working in an office, but likely working in another location, another city, another country, even, that really broadened my ability to be resilient in a recession and also just take chances when I could.
Henry Rotberg Steel, family run, 3rd generation, serving projects across the GTA and beyond. We've partnered with them for years on projects with Eisen Architecture, Vanessa Fong Architects, Drew Mandel Architects, SMPL Design Studio, Richard Liebrecht Architects, Black Lab Architects, Asquith Architects, and more. They supply it all: structural beams, lintels, posts, HSS columns, plates, brackets, base plates, embeds, the backbone of a project. What matters most, they show up when they say they will. They stand behind every promise. Their installers are sharp, efficient, and professional. In this industry, timing and trust means everything. Henry Rotberg Steel delivers both. And I'll tell you, I was having a call today with Brett, their general manager. It's pouring rain here in the city of Toronto, and his installers were installing happily inside of a renovation. Why? Because they knew others wouldn't be there today. They knew they'd be able to put their head down and get the job done. I highly recommend them. I'm happy to introduce you. Email me. It's Jonathan, Jonathan @waldenhomes.ca, and I will happily connect you with their amazing team. Now, back into the episode.
Yeah, it's also as you describe it, it's a different time when it's easy to say this, but to not have cell phones. Like when you're traveling abroad, you're calling collect.
Mhm.
And for those that don't know what calling collect is, like you had to call and ask for someone else on the other end of the phone to accept the charges of that phone call. Okay, like it is a different time. And you're talking about complete and utter independence without the fallback of a parachute of this. And I'm holding up a cell phone. Like you didn't have that as an option. So when you committed to going somewhere, you were gone.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I can appreciate what that would be like.
Yeah, and also I would say that the co-op experience also worked against me in some ways too, because I did go abroad all the time. Because when I did land in Toronto as a graduate with tons of student loans and wanted to live at home, I had no contacts. I never worked in Toronto. My first job after first year, which wasn't an official work term, but was in Toronto. But every other one was elsewhere, and so I didn't really know any of the architects in Toronto. You guys worked in Toronto, yeah.
Well, co-op also, I mean, I think any practical vocational training sets out an ideal. And so, lawyers are set up to have an ideal. They will all want to leave school and work on constitutional or human rights issues, and architects aspire to great things from the school training. And the co-op does begin your process of reconciling with the world, which I think happens. And so I think it's a very helpful component to do that, which carries on.
My first co-op job was at the Toronto Catholic District School Board drawing up barrier-free washrooms. Drew a lot of barrier-free washrooms, but I learned how to draw a barrier-free washroom. But yeah, that was and I was lucky to have had the job. But again, contacts at the school board, context with the world and real buildings, measuring things, like all that practical stuff that,
When you're talking about drawing barrier-free washrooms as a co-op student or obsessing over turning radius of a wheelchair, what you're really learning is that details matter. That carries through every stage of practice. Kaplan's Appliances takes that same approach. They've been a family-run business in Toronto for generations, and their focus has always been on service and expertise. It's not about which appliance has the most features or the highest price tag. It's about finding the right fit for your space and the way you live. Their team knows the products inside and out, and they're there long after the sale. From delivery to installation to making it sure it actually works the way it should. Just like the panelists describe, success in architecture often comes down to sweating the details and taking responsibility for how people experience the everyday. Kaplan's Appliances brings that mindset to something as essential as your fridge or stove, and that's why they've earned such trust in the design community and with us at Walden Homes. If you'd like to learn more, email me, Jonathan, Jonathan @waldenhomes.ca.
And the people you meet too. I mean, my first co-op job, I'm still going out for drinks with the clan from the Let Smith crew that was there. So that's been like over 30 years. And we still get together. So we made some really nice friendships in the co-op. And so don't take advantage of the people that you're working with, because they'll grow in community, and it's almost like a network that you have established in co-op, which, and Kelly and I would be hiring co-op students, because we know the caliber of student and education that they have coming into the office. So there's been a lot of contribution from Waterloo Co-op. at our studio, and and we had that party, invited a whole bunch of them. They all showed up. It was amazing to see them come back.
Yeah. Life makes a lot more sense looking backwards. So
Yeah.
you have these jobs that at the time you may not feel your career trajectory is where you want it to be, and not working at an emboldened name firm. But those experiences can serve you well. I was working at a residential firm. I mean, it wasn't my preferred firm, but you're always grateful for people who hire you. But it wasn't my preferred firm, and then when I had, as life took me, I had opportunity to do a residence, and then from that open a firm that focused largely on residential work. I had much more confidence from that experience, and again, looking backwards, it makes a lot more sense. Gave me a lot more skills that I was able to use that I took for granted and didn't value at the time. So it's a careful dance of patience and impatience and ambition when you're younger.
But I also think, Rob, you mentioned this piece about relationships, and I always try to, recall things were a little looser when we were younger, but Peter Busby gave me the keys to his vintage Alfa Romeo that I promptly drove the wrong way on a one-way street in Vancouver, with him standing, like looking at me, waving, left. But I mean, there was these kind of fun experiences and making friends with the people who employed you. And for me, working in different cities, there was this generosity where people said, well, we're going to take you skiing. We're going to show you these places because you're only here for 4 months. So
Right.
And I try to remember that with the students that come to our offices, to make sure it's not just about the work and the experience, but to make sure that they have some fun experiences, and to make sure that somebody takes them on and tries to give them the opportunity to experience the life of the office and have experiences that are different than just being with your peers all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty magical experience, especially looking back. We were chatting in the hallway about how I was saying school is incredibly magical because you get lit up. They sort of, I don't know, it made sense about, break down your ideas and your conventional thinking and light you up. And it's a very exciting time. And then these opportunities for adventures in the world are incredibly exciting. And then I think this is well timed because now I think everyone in our world, in our history that stayed in the profession now is at a position of great opportunity and leadership. And so the ride looks like it was all fun all the time.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily the case.
Well, you forget maybe the hard work, but I mean, school, reflecting back, was magical, and now I think we've all been fortunate to land in a position of great opportunity for what we do and lead the worlds that we're involved with, and so I think it's a nice story.
Yeah, I want to ask the question, and you kind of alluded to it, Drew, in one of the commentaries you had there about the job you had at a school and in your first job. And how did that place your trajectory in practice? Did it say, I don't want to do this, or I want to do this?
I can start that.
Go for it, Lisa.
My first job out of school, really, my first real job was actually with Carol and Drew
Okay.
at MJMA for 10 years. And I would have to say those were really the golden years of taking ourselves seriously and not taking ourselves seriously enough, with Rob down the street as a kind of Friday evening fixture, and
Still walking.
And I think people still get sick of me talking about my old job, which is now 20 years ago, and the times and the work that we did, and how we worked together again as a people, and the community you build around your projects and the relationships you made started at school. So that's
we were chatting about this earlier. I think they taught rigor and joy, right? That they took the work very seriously, but they always made sure we had fun, and we made sure we had fun. And those were great lessons to learn that we all try to, I'm sure, carry forward in our firms. And, we all had experiences, because I think it's important to learn what you don't want as much as what you do want. And the co-op has that kind of range and variety where we all learned, that if you're beaten as children, you're likely to beat your kids. And we all made decisions to work more like.
What a reference!
But then we chose MGM, or MGM chose us, and
Yeah.
it was a magical time, and they really did teach us great lessons. It was a very kind of non-hierarchical environment, and a great learning place that we still fondly remember.
And I would say, just to tie it back to Waterloo, though, very culturally familiar, right? Because Vic was there and Rob was there and Andy was there. So these are all alumni of Waterloo.
Right.
And so there was this kind of immediate familiarity and understanding of the kind of education that we went through, the kind of values that we had, the memories we had. We all saw Rick in the Forum,
Right.
we all had that experience.
Yeah.
We all had that really life-altering experience, and it was familiar territory. And yeah, I know, and I actually say this a lot too. I do mentor quite a few young graduates, and I always tell them to choose their placements and their jobs really wisely, especially right out of school, because it has tremendous influence on your next steps. You can map that, like life in general. You can map your choices based on the experiences that you had, and that's just really to echo what Drew was just saying is that it's formative. And the 10 years that we spent together was really incredible.
I just saw that little smirk across
Yeah.
the face there, thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was missing on the party, so I did walk down to their office.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. Still
Yes.
walking and referencing what happened in Waterloo and
Yeah.
Kitchener when you were walking down the street. You're walking down the street again.
Yeah.
Where's the party at?
Yeah, I was at KPMB for about 7 years during that time, which is a whole different kind of setup, but still a wonderful place to be, and really, an opportunity to expose yourself to a lot of range of projects
Mhm.
and wonderful partners and people there. And I think at the time there wasn't that much of a Waterloo presence. I think Bob Sims was the one associate there that was actually from Waterloo, and there weren't many others. I know you worked there for a co-op stint, so
Yeah, I was there as a student.
yeah, we all sort of dipped our feet into the KPMG waters, and I got there through a circuitous route, but ended up being very formative, and we still we still
Your wife? No.
That's right. Of course, my lovely wife and partner, Kelly over here. Yeah, we met at KPMB. She thought I was trouble when she first saw me, and I think she was right. I'm still trouble. Thank you, Kelly, for everything.
Oh, what's happening there?
One theme that kept surfacing in this panel was balance, rigor and joy, seriousness and fun, work and life. That balance is what Aquanta Pools is all about. They create outdoor spaces that go far beyond the pool itself. It's about giving families and friends a place to gather, recharge, and enjoy time together. Their work is thoughtful and integrated, not just a hole in the ground with water in it. They think about how the pool connects with the house, the landscaping, and how people will actually live around it. In practice, architects talked about how every decision affects daily life, whether it's a residence or a public building. Aquanta brings that same philosophy to the backyard, creating places that are beautifully built, low maintenance, and designed for real life. It's joy by design, and it proves that great architecture doesn't stop at the back door. If you want to learn more about Aquanta, please feel free to email me. It's Jonathan, JONATHAN, @waldenhomes.ca.
Curious question about, you've all been practicing for a number of years and you're all in completely different disciplines in some way. Sorry, Rob and Drew is somewhat similar, different scales of practice. How did you find your way into the discipline that you're in? Like what led you into it?
Well,
Go ahead, Eric.
I can say that there is continuity with the work from MJM. It's not specifically in the recreational area, but I guess after graduation, there was just this emphasis on public work. So institutional work that was serving communities. And so that's what I knew. That's what I believed in. That's what I was passionate about. And, even my experiences sort of before graduation, working in Barcelona and working in Vancouver and living in these cities, I really, regardless of the work I was doing at those placements, I was a kind of tourist in those cities and had to and did appreciate the public realm and the public buildings that were there, because that was how I experienced those cities. So finding myself in a firm that does pretty much 95% of our work is public institutional work is part of a trajectory of that. And I would say that I have a great variety of work that I do now, much more so than I did at MJM, which was more specialist firm at the time, Moriyama Teshima, and specifically because I do specialize in a way in post-secondary higher ed work. What is that? That's a lab. That's a student residence. That's a student center. That's a research facility. That's a broad range of work, because campuses are like mini cities, and they have these different things. So it's a rich diversity of work, but all in the public realm. So yeah, I think that there's a direct line landing here.
Yeah, I pivoted significantly from MJM. Had an opportunity to build a house at an earlier stage of a career than I would have anticipated. Was very fortunate to do that, and that was at the time, well, it's proven to be a difference maker just to launch a career or launch a firm earlier than I had ever imagined. I mean, that route might not take you to where it took me at this point, but at that time, it was very exciting to do an undersized house and a modern residential house in Toronto. Was, believe it or not, more fresh and special then than it is now. So the media world was very different, and it was well received, and we was able to launch a firm based on that. But the processes that you see at a larger firm like MJMA or others, it's a more formal process, but the same processes apply to the less formal world of residential architecture. And it's a great lesson to have learned that and then bring that to the residential world. And I think Waterloo, taught you just how to think rather than a specific type. And so, in a way, architects see everything in a way undifferentiated, just as an opportunity to make the most of. And so I don't see it as a different world in a way. It's just applying it to a different type. And I was just chatting with an older gentleman that I met through family who was a partner at Webzaraf a long time ago. And we were chatting. He was telling me about his wonderful, accomplished career. And at the end of the conversation, I said, "You're a real architect," because I felt, in terms of city building and public impact and social agenda. And he said, "Actually, I was going to say the same thing to you, because just your direct engagement with makers and the small, tiny three-legged stool project group were very direct contact, communication, and satisfying clients." And so I thought it was a lovely conversation because we both saw the great opportunities and the values in what we're doing. And so different work, but valuable all the same.
My kind of pivot after MJMA, it's like we're in some self-help group. What did you do after MJMA?
Tell me your problems, Lisa.
My pivot from MJMA actually came through another Waterloo classmate, Celia Johnstone, who was working at a very small practice that did TTC work at the time. Transit wasn't a big thing, hadn't been built in decades, and Richard was looking to retire, and she reached out and said, would you be interested? And that kind of started my path to becoming a transit architect. That practice was rather small at the time. I think we were about 10 people.
And now?
And then, that's sort of these steps where I keep joking that I keep getting new jobs I didn't ask for, but Richard's office grew, and we got acquired by IBI for our transit specialization, which oddly, coming from an office where you do a lot of public institutional work, wasn't that much of a pivot, because you're still talking about those same important things, connecting communities, connecting people. How do people use spaces? That grew. Our team moved by IBI, And then we were there and started growing that group again within a larger firm. And then 2 years ago, we got bought again by Arcadis, who's a Dutch firm from the Netherlands, 36,000 people. But what's really interesting about the way, and we kind of kept our practice, is that we have people there, like 25% of our group of 150 who've been there since we're the originals. We're still there because we have this kind of connection through this work together and these lessons from school. At Waterloo, we have a large contingent of Waterloo people still. And those lessons you learn early on, and again, through the co-op and making those connections, and that really, that's what's important. And so I work on, our practice is about 150 transit architects in Canada. I lead the Canada East practice for Arcadis for transit, but we really like to still operate like a goofy bunch of people who want to do work but not take yourself too seriously. And it's an interesting place to be also because we work with a lot of engineers. So often going in architecture school, yes, we're exposed to our engineering courses and being berated by Riney Schuster for not being able to draw shear moment diagrams. But you're in a world of, I didn't know that many engineers existed. I thought civil engineers just did grading in the parking lots for schools. And you're in a room and you're the architect, and there's like 30 specialized engineers to do these large transit projects. So it's kind of exciting to be this oddball in a group of people and still be able to kind of navigate and still coming from those same lessons and the same places from other people. So that's how I kind of landed to be a transit architect.
For me, I mean, KP&D offered a lot of exposure to cultural, institutional buildings that were remarkable in themselves. But at the conclusion of my time there, I knew I needed something different. And that's when Kelly, who was already a partner in life and work, was already doing residential work on her own. And at that time, she decided to get a master's. As she was running her business, she wanted to go back to school and do a master's in architecture. And then that's where I sort of offered up, well, I can help finish up your work while you're in school, though she was working during school. So she's remarkable that way, that she's able to juggle that. But that introduced me into residential, which was a whole different world for me, because it's not like a user group or a sort of a vague consortium of people that, sort of all have different ideas. But you're talking with, usually a couple or two people with very distinct ideas. And the way Kelly was managing that, I was watching her, work with the clients and seeing how different a world it was. So I had to learn on the fly how to deal in the residential realm, which is quite specific and very personal. And I remember the details she would have me consider, like everything had to be considered. In institutional work, a toilet roll holder can go there, that's fine. No one's going to question it. In residential, everything becomes an element of design. And Kelly drilled that into me to understand that, there's no weak detail. There's like always a strong detail, no matter how small it is. And so then I sort of fell in love with the focus and the detail and the immediacy of seeing these homes develop and grow. And hopefully I've been able to contribute as much as I could there, Kelly.
Yeah, I find it interesting because, you go to school and you may or may not have an idea of what you want to do with your life, or you're trying to still figure it out. And what I find so dynamic about it is that there's so much opportunity that exists that goes so far beyond what you could have thought. And I didn't go to, be clear, I didn't go to school for architecture. I have nothing to do with it. We build it. But and on the res side, it's a realm that allows and affords you so much opportunity to see the world and to allow people to experience how they get to go through this world. And I'm going to use the word again, but experience the world, whether it's wherever you're going to put that sink and faucet, or you're gonna really impact someone's day when they get to go home at the end of the day and they have the sanctuary of a home. to be able to calm them from whatever they're dealing with outside. So there's just endless amounts of opportunity.
Yeah, well, I think it's an interesting commentary on scale, and really, I think that the self and the individual is really just a point of departure to the general. So, I mean, you talk about public realm and connecting cities and that sort of connective network of a city, Lisa, but you guys talking about, where to put every considered piece of domestic life. I mean, I think that it's all related, and it's all like you say, our individual journey on a daily basis. In the area that I'm working on in these public buildings, and it's not just higher ed, it's government buildings and many other typologies. What I love about it is the constant discovery, right?
Mm.
The constant state of learning, and technology and innovation is also part of that. So I feel very privileged and, almost giddy sometimes at the opportunities that I get to keep trying things, to just keep. And while you have expertise and transferable knowledge from one technology or one project, it can be then transferred to another. And like you, Lisa, I think right now I'm in a world where the integrated process with all of these other specialists is just so fun, really, to just discover how structure or fluid dynamic modeling for natural ventilation systems actually starts to influence the architecture, or how the architecture needs to use that as part of its palette of material in order to make what's really important for the project, whether it's a collective space, et cetera. But how are you working with these other dynamics that are happening, these other technologies that are emerging too, things like mass timber, and really trying to come back to understanding what a material wants to do and how it wants to behave. And so in a weird way, at a very large scale, I'm kind of circling back to the world that you guys are in with those finer levels of craft because of the new materials and the new technologies that we're working with.
Jonathan and I chatted about this earlier. We've had very minor public work, and what I found to be striking about the difference is you do a residence and you're very involved during the process, and the residence, when the project is completed, the project closes. You can no longer just walk in. Whereas public work, when the project's completed, it opens, and there's something amazing about that. And so we do have, as Rob mentioned, an amazing contact with clients, and the nicest compliment a client can pay you in your best moments. They tell you you've taught them how to see the world in a new way, and it really is touching and gratifying. And we do say that the cities are built one house at a time. But there is, I guess I'd say, a missing component, and the public, when you do a big public work the way you do, and literally thousands, millions of people going through that work, that is an amazing opportunity, and that the private work doesn't have. But you can also, I think, the residential work, you can conceive of the entire thing. You can keep the whole thing in your head. It's a sort of an amazing sculpture as a project, and I think it's a great laboratory to try things out that you can exploit to larger projects.
All right, so I'm gonna ask a different tone of question. What was the most unexpected opportunity or challenge you encountered early in your career? Watching you, Lisa.
Don't ask me for
No, not yet.
think about
Yeah.
that.
No, I'd say it's a recession. The
Okay.
recession. The
Yeah, so go ahead.
hit us hard. We went to school and had co-op terms when people were still doing terrazzo cove bases, and there was you can see buildings from the late 80s and 90s that were the rich palette of materials that were actually used in those. There was a lot of money. There were jobs to be had. There were choices. I could choose to leave town and work in another town. And the recession, I think, hit us all hard. So that was unexpected. But as I mentioned before, it was a bit of serendipity, I guess. But the travel that I took advantage of, and not everybody did that. That's what I wanted to do. So I just went. I went to places and I called people up and said, "Do you have a job for a foreign student?" kind of thing. But that gave me the courage to leave.
Mhm.
And I would think that for our generation, not everybody did that. So we had a lot of people actually fall out of practice.
I think
And-
recessions do have a way of some people are burned by them and are scarred by them, and I think it closes you down. And I think other people take it as an adventure. I also was inspired to go to New York. I mean, really to get a job and for the adventure, I actually got together with my wife there, and it was just a great opportunity to live in New York at a young age. And so I think the recession taught adventure and inspired that. And then the other project was, as I've alluded to, an early opportunity to build a house in the city.
Yeah.
We discovered an undersized lot, a 13-foot wide lot, and had the opportunity to build that.
Yeah, I think it taught us resilience, how to react in that kind of an economic environment where other options would open up and what you could possibly do, and not necessarily distinctly that field. And that, in a sense, sort of toughens you up a bit, I guess, in a sense. And so you want to forge ahead and do things that you don't think you could do, but you can, and don't ever think you can't. So I think you should always, even when we were trying to look for a space for the office, when we decided to actually not be in my parents' basement, and started wandering around downtown and going into warehouse buildings, looking into doorways, going, is any spaces for rent in this crappy old building? Oh yeah, I talked to the guy there, and landlord, 95-year-old guy, just caning it around, and yeah, okay, $600. Okay, and all of a sudden you have a studio, and you go, where's the work? The work will come. We started in a pretty rough place, but it did happen.
I think that kind of more difficult times did kind of teach us, again, the resilience and just to kind of have an entrepreneurial spirit. And even the co-op program was kind of lost with how we were going to get our 7 credits to graduate when there was no work. I mean, I know people that did research and were able to get credits. And I know that I paid my way through 1 year of school by sewing sarongs and sending to Marianne Bull to sell in the market in Kingston. And we got credit for starting and running a business. And so all of this kind of outside of the box thinking we all kind of had to do, whether leaving or just just taught us that, as we did kind of go through school, that time did leave a bit of a void when things did get better, where there was just a gap in knowledge, because people left the profession, but there was also not a lot of work. And there was a point in time where you just didn't have a kind of level of knowledge within the industry because of those tougher times.
Actually, one of the things that I think that was interesting about that time too, which is kind of hard to explain, but it's actually kind of unique to Waterloo, is that despite that, like, we all scattered. Like, we all went to, my roommate went to South Africa, where he was from, and another one went to Singapore, and someone else went to Basel, Switzerland, and Donna Dyken went to the Yellowknife. I went to Hong Kong. We scattered, and this is all pre-internet, right? And this is somehow we still maintained very tight relationships.
Yeah, how?
I don't know what it is about Waterloo, but somehow we're still so tight. Like, even if we saw each other tomorrow, it's really like a very, very close-knit community. I think it's actually very special about here. Maybe it had something to do with how particular and special the program was, with those co-op terms or cultural history or the Rome trip. They really did create these life-altering experiences, and you're kind of friends for life. And that really happened here.
Well, that's the feeling I got when we got on our Zoom call to prep for today. And everyone was saying this is the first time we're kind of all back together again. Mm-hmm. And how joyous that is to be able to bring back those feelings, right? And to have had such, my humble opinion, prolific careers and what you've gone off and done. Mm-hmm. To be able to come back and do something like this and share those types of stories.
Thank you, Waterloo.
When the panel spoke about moving into residential practice, one idea kept surfacing. There are no weak details in a house. Every element has to carry its weight. The front door is the perfect example. It's the first tactile experience someone has with a home. The moment they reach for the handle, the quality, proportion, and material set the tone for everything inside. The doors focuses exclusively on those exterior systems. That ranges from beautifully engineered front doors to massive lift and slide openings that blur the line between inside and out. They also provide curtain wall solutions that can turn an entire elevation into glass while still performing like a precision-built envelope. These aren't afterthoughts. They're defining architectural statements, and the way they operate, seal, and endure is critical. When you're designing a house with no compromises, you can't leave doors and glazing systems to chance. The doors brings technical expertise and options that align with the architecture instead of working against it. Just as the panelists stressed, success comes from eliminating weak points. And that starts at the front door. If you want to learn more about the doors and how we at Walden Homes have worked with them on projects with SMPL Design Studio and Eisen Architecture and Drew Mandel Architects, well then reach out to me. My email address is Jonathan, that's JONATHAN, at waldenhomes.ca, and I'm happy to connect you.
You kind of touched on it before, Lisa. You talked about, walking into a room and it's one architect and a whole bunch of engineers. I'm curious to know, when you look at the other professionals outside of architecture, so the engineers, planners, developers, how do they influence your approach to design and practice? Because I know that it's really easy to, or I actually take that back. It is not really easy. So let's retract that. You go through school and you're learning about architecture, but learning about all the other consultants that make the architecture work completely alter the way you see it and the way it gets constructed. So how has that shaped the way that you pursue the craft?
I think that I take to keep coming back to the community and how we kind of started maybe our careers here and working in these tight groups, but the sort of working with outside consultants or larger, broader requirements, or has contracts change or that scale change, coming back down to the people you're working with and understanding what they need and understanding what you need and kind of working in that community of solving problems together really is how you kind of work things out. Like, we keep going back to the group projects, and sorry, I make a joke about everything, but at the end, I just thought I'm going to get a 0 because I never want to work on another group project again. But really, those group projects really teach you a lesson that if you hear what everyone else needs or how they work or what they care about, and you can kind of all get together and figure out, maybe it's a utopian way of thinking, but that's kind of how at least I try to work my way through all of these things now, because you can't take a 0 in the real world and take 2 weeks off. So that's kind of how I approach working, just trying to make it about the people at the table and what they're trying to solve.
I would say that one of the experiences I had working with a consultant that really changed the way I was thinking about space was working with an acoustician, and actually really digging into just how volume, scale, and dimension changed the dynamics in the space for acoustics. And you start thinking about yourself sort of pushing and pulling the space, and how that influences a sense that in architecture school, you don't really get that exposure in architecture school, but starting to actually feel the impact on the auditory environment, and then that translated to material quality and just angling a wall or creating a primitive root diffuser to break up the sound, and all of a sudden you realize that you were actually playing with the sensory environment through material, shape, size, and scale. And it was just one of those mind-blowing experiences to really just sort of think about space, not through the choreography or the light, the things that we had kind of captured in our studies, but to now think about it as this spatial environment that we were impacting the sound of the space and how that felt. That for me was a real aha moment. And today, working in mass timber, I mean, the relationship we have with the structural engineers is just so integral to what we do that I think that, it's actually fun to see the new potential in what you're doing by working very closely with other consultants.
Yeah, I currently share office space with Blackwell Engineering, and so I think it's a great opportunity to break down barriers. You hear what people say after they hang up the phone after a meeting. So we know we're stupid architects.
Idiot.
They know what they are.
Yeah.
But it's great to have that open concept office space and learn that. And looking back to a recessionary role I had, which was in a design build role where I actually designed it and then built it. We renovated a Ron Tom house early on, and we're literally building board form walls, and so that taught lots of great lessons. It was a great house to work on. So seeing that house across days and seasons, you learned a lot about an incredible piece of architecture. There was a great reciprocity with the landscape, respect for materials, empathy with makers, all of that that I think helped me eventually do those. That helps me to work in the residential world, the high level of craft in a residential world.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend challenging the engineer, make it more complex. If he thinks or she thinks it's easy, I would push it and make sure your ideas, flourish with the engineer's help. And we're fortunate, Blackwell being one of them, that actually like getting pushed. Because engineers, I think, I'm not generalizing, but they like a sort of status quo. It's safe, but you really want, especially in residential, you want to create some unique items, and they might, wince, but I would push them.
Yeah, I would say push them even more on larger projects where potentially there's less desire to want to do anything different. So I think as architects, if we could just keep pushing, I think also it's appreciated, even though everyone does think you're the dumb architect on the block. In the end, they appreciate you for, and also participating in finding the answer with them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that kind of creative problem solving is so necessary now, and this consultant question extends to the builders, and I think that's actually the most rewarding projects that we work on is where we can really deeply collaborate. And deeply collaborating means that at a certain point, everyone on the project understands the prioritization of what really matters in the design, so that we all know what we're protecting and we all know what is it can be modified. And that's where having that joint vision from design through building is actually essential to successful projects in my mind. And, again, I am speaking from a position of great opportunity. I've had opportunity to work with consultants like Transolar in New York, who are these climate engineers who are just, they give us ideas that are like raw material for exploration when they kind of tell us how an environment is being altered by certain moves, and or the potential for a certain site to take advantage of a certain sustainable approach. And so I just think it's really enriched by a collaborative sort of opportunity to think together and solve problems together.
How do you manage the vulnerability of being an architect? Just so you know, the silence afterwards will be edited out.
I think you should
Is it exposure to liability?
The vulnerability in that in residential, that the people are going to experience it on a daily basis. And if there's something they didn't like, they're going to look at it all the time. And there's that in the public sector, that everyone's walking through it and everyone's giving their opinion of something. That you have, there's people that write about it. There's competitions you're going to enter into. And if you feel it was the best piece that you've ever created and it doesn't win the award, you deal with that. There's the vulnerability of sitting in a room and having the potential engineer or someone other consultant tell you that your idea is not going to work. or that it has to get altered in a different way, or there's a builder out there that's telling you it's not gonna, it can't get necessarily built in the way that you have suggested. So there's just endless amounts of vulnerability. So how do you compartmentalize some of that and manage it?
It seems we have no self-doubt, all of us.
Yeah.
we so happy you would sit through with the joke.
Yeah, we ran through the gauntlet in Waterloo. And it's like, okay, now what?
I mean, origami.
Yeah.
No, every day is a battle.
Yeah.
I mean, a little bit. I mean, a fun battle, but a battle. So it's, I always talk about it. Is it, are you cooking stuff? Is it a circus? Is it a war? You just, I don't really think you focus on the vulnerability. You just focus on trying to do the best, squeeze the juice out of everything and make it the best way. And your team works together to figure out what that is. And so it's sort of force of will, and you bring all your skills to it. And so you kind of hone what you think is great, and you never stop until you think it's great. And so, you don't get it right every time, but you always think you're on the right side of making the world a better place, or you try to.
Yeah, you find your own truth in the project that you feel embedded with. So Kelly and I will share that feeling in this project. This is the way it has to be, regardless of some naysayers or whatnot. And when you're honest with yourself and with the client, I think that it helps the project have its own, weight or its soul, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, bring your truth to it and be true to yourself, especially in these kind of designing moments.
I'd add that you just don't get it right all the time, and some days are tough, and you just pull up your socks and you come back the next day and you try again.
Yeah, and I like what you just said, Rob, about trusting yourself, trusting your experience, knowing that you've had, a soundness in your critical thinking. You understand, or you trust your experience, and to return what I was saying, your own personal experiences is not necessarily ego that makes you say that is the right thing to do. It's actually just trusting that if I'm experiencing something, if I understand something, if I understand how I react to a certain space or place or size or scale or dimension, that my experiences about the size of a place that is a great scale for conversation, or a space that's a great scale for public gathering, or if I'm intimidated by something, that feeling is probably common among others.
Yeah.
And so you trust that ability to actually translate and project that, and you go to bat when you need to go to bat, but you also have to have the soft skills of being able to communicate. And to communicate the vision strongly enough so others understand it and believe in it.
It doesn't feel personal in a way. As Rob said, it's the truth of the project. And so it's almost like you're advocating for this thing that has a life of its own. And so it doesn't feel, as Carol says, your ego. You feel you're just advocating to shape this thing the way it wants to be.
I have one or two other questions, but I also would like to open it up to anyone that is here. If there are questions that you want to ask, I have 2 wireless microphones I can bring out, and if you want to ask a question, happy to have you ask it. Would anyone like to ask a question? Is there any? Yes? Okay, so hold on. Drew, I'm going to steal yours.
Hello. It's really inspiring hearing about all of your different professions after architecture school. I just wanted to know if you had any advice for current students here for either looking for a co-op job, or what to do to make more connections or talk to your professors or anything like that.
I think maybe I'm repeating myself a little bit. I mean, I think you just try to be fully immersed in what you're doing and open to every experience, and that's all you can do, and it leads to good things. There are highs and lows, and as I said previously, I think these things make more sense looking back, and you can feel you're not in the moment or on an ideal trajectory, but it'll work out, and these skills that you're acquiring one piece at a time Carol was talking earlier about, hors d'oeuvres and bite-sized pieces, and you build and you build, and before you know it, we've all, I think, arrived at a certain place in our careers we all feel fortunate to have arrived at. And there's no magic. I don't think there's magic advice other than being open, committed, and hardworking, and it'll all work out.
There's one piece of advice I wanted to state is to speak up, ask for work, ask to participate. I know oftentimes as a student or as the new person, and there's a lot of frenzy going on, and particularly with a lot of office being remote, or this idea that you shouldn't go to the office, participate, ask questions, ask if you can sit into the meeting with the supplier, ask if you can go onto the site. I have a co-op student now, and he's always asking for stuff. Don't feel like you're bothering anybody. Don't feel like you're not going to get what you need. Your career and your co-op term is much in your hands, and kind of participate in trying to get what you need, because that is, no one is going to fault you for making the most out of that time in an office. And really, everyone's really always wanting to ensure that co-op students are actually learning something and that we've done a good job, because the worst thing we can do is have someone leave and not learn, both professionally, but just as people.
Yeah. Sorry, one more thing. I already told Jonathan this, so I need new material, but I was listening to a Steve Martin interview, an old Steve Martin interview, and he said, just be undisputedly good at something. Just be so good that people can't ignore you. And I mean, exactly how Lisa, he doesn't tell you how to get a script in someone's hands or how to get a job or what to say at a cocktail party. He just says, be good at something. And so if you're doing all the things Lisa just suggested, I think you'll be seeing that. You'll be viewed that way.
I'd like to add two things. One of them is actually to reinforce that piece. And Lisa, your experience of doing barrier-free washrooms, you don't know how many times I've actually used that exact example with people in the office. I've said, it doesn't matter if you've been given the barrier-free washroom, you become the expert at the barrier-free washroom. You become the source, so that when some experienced architect in the firm wants to understand what is the turning radius, like what is the position on gender neutral here, what does the OBC say, they actually feel that they can come to you. And you know it, and you know how to lay out the tile, and you know exactly what the slip resistance. You choose the grout. You actually understand everything you know about it, and you become expert in that, and you become expert in the next thing you've been given. And so for me, I think that is to just really dig in is a huge piece of advice that I keep telling you, and it is the barrier-free washroom that I use. But stairs, yeah. But the other thing is, and I think you've heard it here today, is that it does matter where you work. The experiences that you have are kind of like these stepping stones to who you're going to be eventually. And so choose wisely. And that doesn't mean choose the most accomplished, the most award-winning place. Like, really dig into the thing that you actually find value in. And if a firm has that in their portfolio, something you connect with, then chances are you're going to get something out of that. And if you're not having a good time there, don't be afraid to leave. And I know that the co-op people here are probably just saying, don't say that. But, I had a job in Vancouver that I landed in, and I was miserable. The culture of the place was not aligned with me. It felt bad. And I left it, and I went and found something else. And I learned so much more in that 8-month work term by taking my chances and working somewhere else. And it was understanding if something doesn't feel right for you, if the culture, and we talked about learning joy and balancing joy and rigor in the place that we all came through, and that lesson persists.
But also don't despair if you're at a place, because Dick Stevens' office, we have a number of colleagues that went through there. it's hard to draw a straight line back then to you being queen of 36,000 person firm. So I mean, I had faith, but it's not always predictable. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
head down,
Yeah.
open, hard work, all the more descriptive descriptions of how to do that. Don't despair if you're a job. It's one day at a time.
Yeah. I was going to add, Drew had a great comment about Steve Martin's comment, be good at one thing. I remember with AutoCAD had just come out and some offices had it, like one computer station out of 6. And before that session of co-op, I actually got the Autodesk for Dummies book, that really condensed book, and actually went through it and read it in the months prior to the co-op session, which ultimately got me comfortable enough to say, yes, I am very good at this. I know how to make attributes, or I can do blocks and all that kind of stuff, which ended up at the forefront of that technology. When I started getting introduced to KP&B, I was then sort of in a position where I had a lot more responsibilities given to me because of that, because other people just didn't really care because they're all designers. And I was more involved in the technical components of stuff. So those interests that you focus in and hone in and become as good as you possibly can, and then move on to another idea or component or skill, because it's about skills and how well you perform.
I want to contribute to that too, even though I'm not on the panel. And I think one of the most important things that you can ever do when you're coming out of school is to make sure that you're not leaving a bad taste in people's mouth as you depart and you enter into the workforce. You want to maintain relationships with people in some way. If you didn't get along with someone, that's fine, but it shouldn't be a burned bridge. It should be something where you amicably left it alone. And as you enter into the workforce, maintain relationships with people. Send a text message to someone, wish them well. Take note of people's birthdays, put it in your phone, send them a note on saying happy birthday. It sounds really silly, but it means something. Like on your birthday, when you get a text message from someone, you know that you're going to get it every year. That person stands out in your mind. So there's small indelible things that you can do that can really make you stand out as an individual. And it's the person that stands out as an individual that's generally going to find their way towards something that they're going to love to do.
So I suppose stealing a roll of Mylar is not on the
Well,
on the departure.
Sometimes you got to steal, Look. Is there anyone else that would like to ask a question? Okay.
Hi. So I'm in 3rd year, and obviously right now we're very much like swamped in like finals and all that. And I think being in this position, you're really thinking in the short term and just kind of thinking about getting through the term and then kind of experiencing co-op. I'm really interested in how you guys thought about your futures when you were at this age, and how you kind of understand like what you might be doing like after bachelor's or after master's.
After 3rd year, I think I took a year off.
There doesn't need to be another answer.
Leave it.
Well, I did it in effect so I can work. I was able to get the funds necessary to do the Rome trip, because I knew I was going to stay in Europe for a year. So I sort of, filled my wallet as much as I could and, bump into you there.
I bumped into
Yeah.
Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Did you bump into each other on Vespas?
No, not that.
No,
not
not
that
that
time. Yeah, I didn't know that I would be saying, self-employed architect. I was just, I knew I'd be in the field. I loved it, and how it's evolved that's just life happening. So the passion's there. It'll carry you through.
You've got to have a plan, but I think Waterloo not sets you up, but it lights you up, inspires you to have an ideal version of a career, and that there's an amazing period of reconciliation with the world and the places you fall. I think people have. I would guess that upon graduation, people have a very common idea of what they want to achieve. That's superstar, museum work. And it's an incredible thing to watch, a slow unfolding of people finding their places and happy places and evolving and shifting priorities and families and commitments. And so it's a process. And so I think we're reflecting fondly on our early career where you are now, and then we've landed in a different place now. But it is a period of reconciliation with the world it's a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I'm trying to think back to like third year and like prior to the Rome term. And, you know, you mentioned vulnerability, and I can actually recall being like addled with like a vulnerability. You know, can I do this? Like, what's coming next? You know, you never. Maybe I wasn't that pleased with the project that came out that year, and I landed in Barcelona, and I was just completely inspired, just incredibly, and again, we keep going back to how old we are and the pre-internet, but you know what was showing up in the magazines back in North America were you know, Marsical and these really great interiors with cracked stone that looked like derivative of Gaudi or something. And that's what everybody thought was happening in Barcelona. That's not what was happening in Barcelona. It was like the new minimalism was coming through, and it was just this incredible, like mind-blowing experience. And I guess I'm circling back to confidence. I'm circling back to trusting yourself. I'm circling back to exposing yourself to experiences and trusting the thing that moves you to help guide your next step. And I think that, yeah, having a plan, obviously I'm not a strategic thinker. It's more generative, I think, but I don't think, you know, necessarily that I have a goal and I'm going to take these steps to get there. And maybe you are that, and you have to recognize that in yourself as well. If that's how you think, then do that. You know, you create the version of yourself and then map out the steps to get there. But if you, my advice, from my experience, is to genuinely experience the things that bring you, you know, inspiration and joy, and then try to discover what your next step is from the things that actually inspire you.
It can take a while to figure out what you're good at. You know, things that you might not imagine now. You could be a communication person. You could be an administrative person. We all know people that have graduated, we've gone into adjacent areas. Like they've worked in-house for companies. They've been brand experts. They've been developers, technical experts in an architecture office, facade experts. I mean, there's an incredible range of opportunity, and you sometimes timing is something that you can't control, but timing and opportunities will take you places you may never have imagined. But there's a great range of opportunity for you to find what you're great at and can enjoy.
You know, Elsa Lam is also a graduate of Waterloo, and you know, she's helping run Canadian Architect magazine. So there's really, and part of the reason why I want to put together a dynamic panel is because there is so much opportunity that exists. So again, I'm not a part of this per se, but generally, if you're lucky, you're going to walk through a door because someone's going to hold it for you. So as you go through, you want to make sure that you're holding the door for the next person, because hopefully that chain continues and doors stay open and you find your way into the place that you want to be.
The practice of architecture really is incredibly unique. It does train you to think and multitask and be able to organize in a way that other disciplines can't. So that also offers you incredible opportunities for those that maybe want to take less traditional roles, particularly in large-scale projects. Architects are the ones that are able to manage things better or put people together. So that the training that we get, and I'll say the training in Waterloo and also the co-op program that allows you to learn those skills early on, are invaluable. And I really think that there's endless possibilities through our education and training and what we can do.
Do we apply for one more after this? Do we pay uptight?
So you mentioned how a lot of your classmates
went abroad because of the recession. Do you think there's like one aspect of your education or a particular skill, like soft or hard, that enabled people to work like all over the world, especially since like, construction techniques and stuff vary?
Well, I would say it's part of it is just being open-minded, having a likability that you can communicate that you're willing to do and make the most of the opportunities that are given to you. It's a hard thing to say. I mean, I think that getting back to the skill set that you were talking about, like being good at one thing. I mean, that for me, it turned out to be that that opened doors for me when I came back. So when I was in Hong Kong, I was catting every day for 2.5 years, and so when I came back, I was able to get a job at then Taylor Herreri Pontarini, now Herreri Pontarini, and so to land into a firm like that, just because you had that skill was really important. So if there is something that you are good at, I would say hone it and offer that up. But it's I don't know that there's a magic to it, and now with the availability of being able to contact firms all over the world, it's maybe a bit more competition. But to know your value and to also be willing to try what they have to offer, and maybe it's not what you expected that you were going to do, but to just grab onto it and realize that if you're leaving and you're going somewhere else, the majority of what you're going to learn is about that place, is about that culture, is about the architecture there. I had a fantastic experience in the office I was in Barcelona when I was a student, but I learned from Barcelona. That's where I did all the learning. And I would say the same for even my time in Hong Kong. I learned from Hong Kong and all the places I visited in Singapore or Bangkok or Indonesia or Japan. That's where the learning happened. It didn't really happen in the office. And I think that early in your career or when you're still a student, you just have so much opportunity to soak it in. You just do. And I know it seems risky, but you really are so young and open to soaking in the world. And that's the best advice I can give to anybody, is to soak in as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I think there can be some degree of groupthink in aesthetic groupthink in certain eras. You look back on what was on the front page of the magazines when we were in school. I think I worked for some guys that were Columbia graduates in New York, and they were trained in a different way than I was, but they taught me a lot about beauty that stayed with me, about proportion and beauty that I wasn't maybe getting as much of in school, that I think was great. So yeah, being open to that. I think that applies to school as well, not just adventure outside of school. But I think, sometimes people whine about a professor that they don't agree with, but I think just it's like a ticket on a ride. Professors have a shtick or a bag and they're good at it, and you just go for the ride and just go along with it. And you can learn a great deal looking from another lens and taking that on. And I think the variety of inside and outside school experiences can be rich and give you a great, rich, deep experience.
Yeah, and you make a good point, because it's like, how do you even know what you like? It's like when a menu comes around, right, and that you've never seen anything on it, how do you even know what you like? And so learning what you don't like is just as important.
Yeah.
I would say don't be afraid to just go and don't hold yourself back, because sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. So yeah, just try different things and you'll learn from everything. So there can't be a downside for just trying and going.
Well, I did like about 13 months in a backpack in Europe and absorbed as much as I could. And then all of a sudden Drew shows up. and that was a pivotal moment. Where was it? It was at Gaudi's, was it Sagrada Familia?
Richard Meyer.
Okay. My memory is going. But yeah.
I'm in Montreal.
Montreal. Yeah. Expose yourself to as much as you can, and not, internet stuff, because that's, you got to see, how to get there, how to move. Like, if you haven't been to Corbusier's Grand Champ, the whole passage and the way to get there is a journey in itself. So you can see beautiful photos, but you don't experience the whole procession and the narrative of how to get there. It is one of the hardest places to get to.
No, I think images are a problem, right? The slow unfolding experience of a place can't be overstated. Experiencing a place,
Which I would add to say that if you go there and you arrive, touch as much as you can, breathe in as much as you can. Like, remember what those senses were like when you arrive, because those are things that can stick in your mind in a different way than the image will.
Light, material, promenade.
Yeah. Anyone else have a quote? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Hopefully this should be a fun question. If you could go to any building in the world, you would have unrestricted access and you don't have to worry about how you would get there. Which building would you go to first and why?
Excellent question.
I actually, I was really interested to see Lautner's Sheets Goldstein house. And so I wrote him a letter. I wrote the owner a letter, and he wrote back and said the office wrote back and said, show up at the gate at this time in Los Angeles. And so I just showed up, and he gave me I think it was a 2 or 3 hour tour personally of this residence that has all kinds of, well, it's an incredible, it's appeared in Charlie's Angels and a bunch of movies.
One of Drew's favorites.
And I feel I did it. It was fun. It was one of the greatest houses I've seen. Big Lebowski. It was in the Big Lebowski.
The one I wanted to see, never had, was Pierre Chareau's Maison de Verre in Paris. That's a very challenging one to get into, but that would be one that I've missed on my itinerary of my travels.
Yeah, I've written 3 letters to them. I got in the courtyard.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I dragged my whole family to see the Barcelona Pavilion and thought I was nuts, but I feel like I've seen
That's a good one.
yeah.
Yeah, there's the greatest, the list of 150 greatest hits that I don't know if I've even like scratched the surface of, but again, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and it's one I've actually gone to, but so Zumthor's spa at Val's. So arriving there with my husband, he sort of said, I'm sorry to tell you, but it's actually closed for maintenance. And I said, we're going to go anyway. I just got to see it from the outside. So we drove through the Alps, and we get there, and we're walking on the hill, and it's nested into the hill, and it's fabulous. And then we realized we could just kind of like hop over the fence. And then we realized we could walk down onto the outdoor bath area, and then my husband Yarly is at the brass door, and he pulls it open, and so we did have unrestricted access, and it happened. Oh my God! It was like a sculpture, like just walking through, and again, I've talked a little bit about how there's the shaping of spaces and how it changes you, like to walk through all of those little moments in that space by yourself and actually just feel how space changes how you experience a place. Yeah, we did it. And so the lesson is always try the door. But
It's like thinking of like Tom Cruise in Vanilla Sky walking through Manhattan by himself.
yeah. It was pretty amazing experience. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, so I will ask my last question. My last question is: you've all well established yourselves in your careers as architects, as professionals. Children, would this be a career that you would suggest a child should go into, or not? If you don't have children, would you say, yeah, I should say, yeah, kids should go into this. Yeah, they should pursue a career in architecture.
This is an easy one for me. Some of you might know my son. So yeah, Leif is a student here. So I think the answer is pretty easy for me. I would say that this is not a easy profession. It can be stressful. It can break your heart. It can be, like you say, you're exposed. You're always doing things that people tell you they like or don't like, and you have to detach yourself from that to some degree. But we get to imagine the world every day in a way that we think is contributing to making it better, even if it's on a personal level. Even if it's designing for an individual or designing for a conversation. These are all really, really wonderful things. It's also an opportunity to learn deeply about our relationship with the planet in the way that we construct and how we construct and how we do that, not only responsibly, but with respect for the things that we're choosing to build with. And respect for other people. So I say, yeah, go for it.
Well, my son applied to Waterloo and was accepted and did not go, but against my advice. But it was an amazing moment because I never had advocated for him to go into this profession. But there is a magical time when he's telling me that he's going to apply. So you just feel that your life doesn't look terrible, at least from the outside, to your children. And but it's a moment because we're all in, right? We're all in, and we can't. We're done. We're decided. So you don't really question whether it's good or not. You just do it. And but so to have someone you love think about going into it, you suddenly go, would I recommend this? And I think it was an interesting mental exercise just to think, yeah, I love it. And it was exciting for him to almost go here.
I would say that I don't have children, but I, just in sort of I've had many take your other friends' children's to work day, and ended up convincing, unbeknownst to me, quite a few people to go to architecture school. And I think that we have a unique profession where you can get to go to work every day and create a place where everyone can work all together and be creative. And yes, it's a hard profession, but it does offer people a place to explore, to have fun, to laugh, to create the space where you just want to go every day. And I just also being around a whole lot of other professions, I'm not sure that those necessarily offer that. So if someone has that interest in a very collaborative and communal type of work, I would definitely encourage architecture school and the profession.
I wouldn't discourage my children. I mean, the eldest is not into it. It's just she's a hard-nosed, beautiful young woman that's into the financial world now. But the younger kids, I can see either of them. They might get interested in it, and we would just lay out a sort of idea of what to anticipate. But as long as I know they were doing things that are making the world a better place, and I think that's what we feel we're doing as we do our work for the larger community around us. So, I would love them to do it if they'd like to, but we'll leave it up to them, obviously.
Lisa, Drew, Robert, and Carol, thank you for participating in this. Those that have joined as a part of first ever audience for this recording, thank you for attending. Thank you for your questions, and I really appreciate everyone's involvement. It's been really enlightening, and I'm happy that you said yes.
Well, thank you, John.
Thank you.
And thank you, Waterloo, for having us.
Yes, thank you, Waterloo.